Is one of several.
In 1976, at the Montreal Olympics, Nadia Comaneci from Romania won 3 gold medals, a silver medal, and a bronze medal in gymnastics. Her performances were breathtaking. I'm sure most of us remember. But it wasn't just her performance. It was the seriousness. It was her poise for a 14-year-old young woman that made these performances so wonderful to us. This Saturday afternoon on ABC's Wide World of Sports, we're going to see Nadia Comaneci in this season's competition, and Jim McKay is with us this morning to talk about how Nadia is doing. Jim, good seeing you again.
Good to see you again, David.
First, very well, thank you. First, let's look at Nadia from 1976. First in New York at the American Cup International Gymnastics Competition, and then at the Olympics in Montreal.
Okay, well, the American Cup was the first time we ever saw her get a 10. That's the significance of that particularly. We had seen her before, but on this free exercise, she got 10, which, of course, is a perfect mark in gymnastics. So it was a little foretaste of what was to come in Montreal. This theme, by the way, had not yet become her theme. It was still called something else. It was a movie theme, I believe, and a soap opera theme at one point. But it became hers because it was used on one piece we did up in Montreal later. But this was the 14-year-old Nadia, and you can see that her figure was absolutely straight and almost childish in some ways. There was 10.
10.
And here she was on the balance beam in Montreal. This is where she really dominated the first week of the Olympic Games. Small figure from a small country.
She's incredible.
There's an interesting shot. All right, so was Nadia in Montreal, age 14, and there was a tiny little smile there. Oh, a big smile when she finally turned around, and that's something you very seldom see from her, as you know.
That's unusual for her. Is that true of all the Romanians?
It's true of all the Romanians, but it seems truer at the moment. As a matter of fact, when we were at the World Championships, some of which you'll be seeing tomorrow on Wide World of Sports, the whole Romanian team looked very down to me. And in fact, the Russians have come back and are very dominant once again over the Romanians and everybody else in the women's aspect of the competition. I don't know whether they're just working the kids too hard or what. We hear a lot of stories. We heard stories after the Olympic Games that Nadia had quit gymnastics, that she had had a nervous breakdown. There was a rumor she had tried to commit suicide. None of these confirmed, you know. But you heard all these things.
The main
one we heard was that she had gained 20 pounds. And the assumption was that she was fat, you know. Well, she has gained 20 pounds, but she's grown 3 inches. She's by far the tallest person on the team now.
And a big girl. Is that the only way she's changed, and that she's just gotten bigger and taller? Or?
That I can tell. There's always that doggone language barrier every place we go with Russians and Romanians, you know, and they're not really encouraged to speak the few words of English that they have usually. And everything suffers in translation. But she seems just as serious, and I would think basically just as shy.
As she was before.
Yeah.
Let's look at some tape from the World Gymnastics Competition from this past fall, and this is from France.
Now, this was in Strasbourg, and this was Nadia, I believe, in the all-around competition. Now, the big thing about Nadia was that she had grown. Look at the changes in her figure right there.
Right.
And her entire free exercise routine has been changed partially to accommodate the change in her figure, but I don't like it. It's a kind of a mechanical man kind of thing, if you noticed, doing all these little jerky sort of actions.
The grace isn't there anymore, that kind of...
Well, Kathy Rigby, our expert and the best American gymnast of all time up until right now, Kathy says that the Romanians don't have the ballet training of the Russians, and that's why they go to kind of either cutesy pie, as she calls it, or kind of mechanical-looking things.
Right. What kind of training do they get, Jim? Well, let's watch her, because...
This is the uneven bars. And as I said, she did not win the individual all-around. She did not defend her championship successfully. She eventually won 1 gold medal on the balance beam. So it's a different Nadia, but still a competitive Nadia. Whether she'll still be competitive by 1980 in Moscow, I don't know. Were we starting to ask?
I wanted to ask, what kind of training do they get, and how does the Romanians, and how does it compare to our gymnasts' training here in the States?
Well, I would say that gymnastics dominates their life more than it dominates the life of the American kids, but all these world-class gymnasts have to really be pretty much in tunnel vision during the time that they're competing on the world scene. Now, I think everywhere the training has changed in this sense, that when Kathy Rigby was around, I went out and spent a whole day with her one time with tape cameras, and Kathy used to train 8 and 9 hours a day. Well, now they're down to like 4 and 5 hours a day, which is more comparable to figure skating, for example.
What about the coaches,
but the
though?
Romanians are on tour so much of the time. I think that's what makes the kids tired, and the Russians. Remember Olga? By the time she got to Montreal, she looked like a little old lady. We saw her a few months later after she's had some rest, and she looked fine.
Yeah. What about the training, though? What about the coach? Are they slave drivers or whatever you...
You hear a couple of versions about Bela Karoli, who is the coach of the Romanian team. Some people say, well, he's a very nice guy and very pleasant. Other people say he's very much a slave driver and that he's hard on the kids. Someone who should know told me that when they were on tour in the United States, in 20 days, they only had 6 square meals. So, and there's one little girl, Amelia Everly, who's one of their best, who looks like she's half starved to death. Now, maybe that's her natural appearance. I don't know. But they don't look like a happy crowd at the moment, the Romanians.
How
and I think it could affect their...
How sad to have such potential and such ability and not seem to enjoy it, or at least they don't seem to enjoy it.
Well, that's for sure. It isn't for fun.
What about the 80 Olympics? What have we learned from this competition in France about the 80 Olympics? Anything?
We have learned one very big thing, as you'll see tomorrow, without tipping you off. People get angry with us if we tell them who won before the thing is on the air. You know, it's like when you don't want to know who won the game, so you don't listen to the radio all day.
Listen to it and enjoy it.
Yeah, but I can say that the Americans had the greatest day in the history of American gymnastics on the day of competition that you'll be seeing tomorrow. So the Americans are finally here. There have been many threats that were coming and so forth and so on, but both in men's and women's gymnastics, there are Americans who are most competitive on the world scene and who should be very good in the 80 Olympics. They will, however, be on the Russians' home court, so to speak, and that'll make a difference.
Yep.
And particularly it'll make a difference, though, for the Russians, I think, vis-a-vis the Romanians, and for the Russian men vis-a-vis the Japanese, because they're their big rivals. And the Americans just might sneak in there and get a couple of golds.
Jim, great seeing you again.
Good to see you, David.
And I'm looking forward to seeing the competition from France.
Thank you.
We'll be back in just a couple of seconds.